1 year ago today, my husband took what will likely be his last steps on U.S. soil. At 2:15 p.m., we boarded a plane from New York City to Ecuador, a country my husband hadn't visited in over a decade, and a country that I had never been to. Since we were both raised in Queens, we never really considered living outside of New York, until that is the morning that ICE agents knocked on our door and took my husband away. Almost 2 years and countless court dates later, there we were, hand in hand at JFK, getting on a flight, as he was deported from the only home he's ever known. The weeks leading up to his deportation were emotional, to say the least. I was 27 weeks pregnant, and we were trying to say goodbye to everyone while still remaining safe in the middle of a pandemic. On top of that, we were packing and labeling all of our belongings to be shipped to another continent. Our first year here has been a roller coaster. We welcomed our first child, and we did some traveling. We've cried a lot, but we've laughed a lot too.
Sam's husband got deported from America and now they live in Ecuador.
Sometimes I think our social media romanticizes the life we have. After all, Ecuador has some of the most beautiful views on earth, and we get to spend every day with our daughter. But the truth is that every day is still hard. Every day we wake up in a place that we didn't choose. Every day we wake up very far from the people and places that we love most. We've missed weddings and births and funerals back in New York, and those are the moments that you can never really get back. Even though it's been a year, I think we're still coming to terms with that new reality.
People online were confused about how he was deported.
So I've been seeing a lot of comments asking why or how my husband got deported if we were married and I'm a US citizen. My husband and I were married before he was detained, before he was deported. Here's a wedding photo. Cute. My husband had been in the US long before I even met him, and he had had his green card long before I even met him. So he was a lawful permanent resident at the time when we met. And so there was no way for me to sponsor him. So some comments have been accusing me of not filing the paperwork or not sponsoring him or not getting a lawyer or not doing it the right way. That wasn't our process. He was already a green card holder by the time that I met him and that I came into his life, or he came into mine.
So I think something I said in my initial video is confusing people, because people have made comments like this, like he was in the US for 10 years. No, my husband lived in the US for over 30 years. He was brought to the US by his family when he was a toddler. He was 2 or 3 years old. So he never remembers living in Cuenca, even though he was born here and he's Cuencano. So when I say he was here over a decade ago, he was here for vacation. He still has family here, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and he also came to do some traveling when he was in college. So he had visited Ecuador as a kid and when he was older, but he had never lived here. Also, everyone here looks at him as if he's from the US and not as if he's Ecuadorian.
Once they arrived in Ecuador, they had issues naming their daughter.
I was almost legally unable to name my daughter the name that we had picked out for ages. My husband and I moved from New York City to Ecuador in 2020 because he was deported by the United States, and our daughter was born shortly after in early 2021. So generally how it works is one parent, usually the father, mom stays home with baby, goes to the registro civil with a paper that you get when your baby's first born, and you register the birth. They become a real legal person. So imagine my surprise when I'm sitting home with my baby, almost a month postpartum, and my husband calls me from the civil registry and he says, "They say her name's not a name, we can't name her that." Now, we have been calling her this name before she was born and since she was born, and I was not giving this name up. Her name is Mila, just Mila, but they said that this was a derivative of real names like Camila, Emiliana, Milagros. To make a long story short, after hours of my husband fighting and me going down with the baby in the middle of a pandemic, turns out that because I'm a foreigner, we could basically name her whatever we wanted. Also, I've heard that Cuenca, where we live, is way more strict about this. Google the most unique names from Manabi. You'll see some wild things. My favorite part of this entire experience is when we would tell aunts and uncles what happened. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, that happened to us. That's why your cousin is named whatever." And the amount of men in the family who just changed the baby's name after the registro civil told them no to the original name without consulting their wives is crazy. One uncle literally named his daughter after himself, and the wife didn't know until he got home.
These weren't the only name-related issues they faced.
When I got married in 2018, I rapidly changed my last name to my husband's last name. Not because I didn't love my maiden name, I still love my maiden name, but I always loved growing up having the same name as my entire family, like my parents and my siblings, and I always wanted that for my kids. Little did I know that I would be moving to a country less than 2 years later that has completely different last name customs. It is customary here to have 2 last names. You get 1 last name from your mother, 1 last name from your father. You might be seeing where this is going. And when women get married, sometimes they'll change one of their last names, generally their mom's last name, to their husband's last name, or they don't change their name at all, or like very old style, you can become they and then your husband's last name. So like I said, I changed my name, legally changed my name on all of my documents before I moved here, not knowing at the time. My husband, because he was born here, has both his mom and dad's name. Like, that's his name here. So he has two last names. To go register my daughter, you might remember that they gave us a problem about her first name because they said it wasn't a real name. But then when they went to put her last name, because my last name is my husband's name from the US, they put his last name twice. My whole plan of wanting my whole family to have the same last name, not one of us has the same last name. I mean, I guess technically we all share one common last name, but none of us have like the same full last name.
Despite everything they've been through, we are so glad to see that Sam and her family are thriving over in Ecuador. In the comments section, people were unhappy with how her husband was treated, with one person saying, "This is a tragedy. They should not do this to people, especially if he's been here for 30 years. Wow." While another said, "I'm not even going to try and understand US immigration. My wife got permanent residence in my country immediately after we got married." As always, thank you so much for watching Happiest. If you like this video, then be sure to follow our Instagram and TikTok pages as well. And if you've got any videos that you'd like us to share, do feel free to send those in.